Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking actually about a film that is directed by a guy who I've been watching on YouTube for a long time. Film critic Chris Stuckman, who has been on YouTube for a while now. I've also been a fan of his and a subscriber of his for a while now too. He finally has his new feature-length film that's also his directorial debut, Shelby Oaks, now in theaters. And I've actually been really looking forward to this film for a while now. I know I had a really successful Kickstarter campaign. I know on Chris Stuckman's channel alone, he's been giving production updates and giving updates to everybody that he has this big feature film coming out, and now it's finally out in theaters. And yeah, I'm very excited to report to everybody that I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. But before I kind of go into my thoughts on the overall movie, for those who don't know anything about what Shelby Oaks is about, it's a film that is regarding a woman who has a sister who was a part of a paranormal hunters group that was on the early stages of YouTube. That's kind of where the film begins, kind of where YouTube is still a young internet site and it's still kind of in its learning stages and its early, phase of what YouTube is going to be and all this other stuff. And so basically, this woman's sister and all these other paranormal investigators go missing, and they've been missing for several years now. And so basically, something happens where somebody shows up at her doorstep one day, and it's a big hint that basically this guy leaves behind of where her sister might be after all these years. And so this leads into kind of her own investigation of where her sister might be since the police kind of gave up on it years ago. And so as the film progresses, we find out what exactly happened to her sister. What's the significance of the Shelby Oaks neighborhood that this title of the movie is also based off of? What exactly happened to her? How is this all connected to her paranormal investigations? And if she is still alive, what's her health condition? How has she been surviving all this time? All this stuff is basically answered over the course of Shelby Oaks, this movie. But overall, guys, like I mentioned previously, I really enjoyed this film quite a bit. It's a very uniquely told story, and since I've been following Chris Stuckman for a while now, there's a lot of stuff from films that he really enjoys over the years that is very evident here while you're watching the film. He's a big fan of Signs, he's a big fan of Sinister and Blair Witch Project and Rosemary's Baby and all this other stuff that is clearly referenced over the course of this film. And I think for the most part, this film works very, very powerfully, and it very much shows, how Chris Stuckman has always been passionate about film, and so it's definitely his opportunity to write and direct his own story. Apparently, his wife helped him with the screenplay for this too, and I thought it was just a very well told story. So I'm going to go over some positives and negatives as to why I really enjoyed the film overall, but some negatives along the way that prevent this from being like a perfect film or anything like that too. So for my positives, like I just mentioned, it's a very uniquely told story. I like how it very much has like a YouTube flavor to it. I like how there are certain scenes that really do feel like you're watching something that was on, like a very old form of YouTube or like an old form of video cameras that were meant to go up, be uploaded to YouTube. It also has a very kind of like if you were to look at old paranormal videos when YouTube first started, you would definitely kind of get that kind of feel and vibe from this movie the way that those videos once felt. And I think that's a very strong way to tell a story like this. And I just really enjoyed how there's very much a YouTube flavor to this movie, and I think it's very appropriate with Chris Stuckman being involved on YouTube for such a long time now. And I thought that was a very unique flavor that he brought to the film. I also like all the scares and the creepy visuals that the film has. It truly does have a scary sense of demons and um, hell wolves and all this other stuff that you see over the course of the film. And like I said, there's also some creepy visuals regarding some coyotes in the movie too that I think are very effective. So every time there's a scene that's meant to scare you or a scene where a certain kind of visual is meant to creep you out, I think it's very, very effectively done here. I thought Chris Stuckman did a very good job with that as well. I also liked all the homages to other great horror films, like I said earlier. Sinister, Blair Witch Project, Rosemary's Baby, Signs, um, even a little bit of maybe a little bit of Barbarian thrown in there too. There's just a lot of flavors to other great films that clearly Chris Stuckman was inspired by and clearly has enjoyed over the years. And it's great to see his passion and his love for those films make their way into his movie as well. So for those who were hoping maybe for like a completely original story from Chris Stuckman, it's not really so much that. It's one of those movies where I really feel like Chris Stuckman was meant to set out to make a film that's homaging to films that he really admires. There's also a lot of Lake Mungo in this movie, and I know Chris Stuckman really likes that movie too. So a lot of homages to films that clearly he really enjoys, and I think because I enjoy a lot of those films as well, there's a lot to enjoy here and kind of see Chris Stuckman's take on kind of a YouTube version of that and a kind of a um, early YouTube stage, kind of where the maybe the video is a little grainy or maybe the video camera being used for some of the footage is a little dated compared to 2025 standards. And so I'd really liked the overall flavor and homages that Chris Stuckman brought to his overall film. And I also like too for being a low budget film because I think this film was made for a little over 1 million, but I'm not sure on that because it was a Kickstarter campaign that kind of funded most of the movie for the most part. I like how this film doesn't feel as low budget as you think it would be. Like there's scenes where like a character levitates in the air from witchcraft and stuff, and it looks a lot more expensive than it probably was. There's even scenes too where like even for the opening credits, it does kind of look like this very good like David Lynch type of mystery or even like a David Fincher mystery and suspense kind of story. Um, and like I said, those moments in particular look a lot more expensive than I'm sure they probably were to make. But I like how this film really kind of uses every dollar to its advantage, the way Chris Stuckman said for his Kickstarter campaign to get this movie made. And it really does feel like it's has a bigger production value that it was working with than they probably really had to work with. And it really does show that, if you make every dollar count, you could really make a great story out of it. I also like the overall lead character that the film follows. Like, you really get a sense of what she's going through, how she's feeling when she's looking through, old video footage of where her sister might have gone. You really kind of feel everything that she is going through, and definitely on scenes too where she's getting scared or witnesses something that's very terrifying to see firsthand on something. Um, Very effective stuff here. I really like the overall lead character. I was very much behind her mission. You really want her to succeed as far as where her sister went and what she has to do to get those answers to those tough questions. And I just really felt invested in her overall mission as a character. But for my negatives of Shelby Oaks, I thought more time and more explanation could have been provided for this villainous cult that kind of shows up throughout the movie. Definitely kind of the link to who the overall villain is in the movie. I just thought there was certain aspects of their motivation, certain aspects of their actions as characters and as an organization that really kind of needed more explaining to me. Like I really didn't know what their mission was as a cult. And I know with cults, you're really not supposed to know necessarily. But for me personally, I thought for being kind of a villainous force, villainous cult, more time could have been spent with them, and I think more explaining as to why they are the way they are could have happened. I know it's cool to have a little bit of mystery every once in a while in certain aspects of your story, like when Michael Myers was fully explained in the Halloween franchise. I know that kind of diminished that character a little bit. So I know specifically with Chris Stuckman's way of viewing films and kind of viewing what makes the best possible film, I know it's important to always have a little bit of mystery in there too. But for me personally, for this cult in particular, more time I think could have been spent with them and more explanation could have been provided as to why they are the way they are and what their motivations are overall in general for what they're doing. I thought that really would have benefited the story overall for the most part. I also thought, and the friend I saw this with too made this pointed this out. There was also some really weird character decisions throughout the movie too. Like there's scenes where a character gets splashed with blood after this really violent incident, and they kind of just keep the blood on their face while doing this thing that they discovered during the incident, and they just kind of keep it on there. They don't kind of wash it off in the bathroom quick and then go off to the next thing. So it's just weird decisions like that that the characters do where it's this consistent, like blood stain on their face or consistent action or the way that they go from one place to another without taking care of this thing from earlier first. That also was kind of weird to me. I also thought there's even a scene too where like a character has to break into like this abandoned asylum of sorts, and she just kind of breaks in with whatever is available to her. She doesn't even plan ahead of what she's going to bring with her and stuff like that. So there's scenes like that that are a little hard to get into and are a little hard to kind of get behind the decision behind what the character's doing. And I know that's kind of a typical movie trope that, not every choice in a movie that a character makes you're going to agree with. But for me personally, there was times like those two examples I just provided where it was a little difficult to get behind the character mission at times. And overall, too, because this is such a low budget movie, there clearly is some production cost limitations that this film's going to run into. One that kind of stood out to me in particular was there's scenes where this, I think her name was Riley Brennan, where where characters from this town are trying to graffiti on like buildings and organizations to kind of get people more aware of where this person went. And there's scenes clearly where they either got permission to graffiti on the wall if they cleaned it up afterward, and there's scenes too where they probably use some type of cheap software to make it look like it's there when it's not really there, because there's certain kind of softwares like Photoshop that allow you to make it look like that something is implemented on something that's not really there. And there's scenes like that that really kind of show a little bit. They really do feel like they were kind of working with a limited budget for what they could do and not do with graffiti and all this other stuff. So there's a little small moments every once in a while where it's kind of noticeable with that area. But I think for the production they went with, I think they made the most of their budget, and they really were able to still tell a really good story with the money that they had. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Shelby Oaks an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a really well-made movie. I'm very excited to see what else Chris Stuckman has in store, if he has more directorial efforts in store that for us, for as far as other films that he might work on in the future. But I think this is a great first directorial effort. I'm really glad that the film turned out great. I think it was worth the wait for all these, production updates from Chris Stuckman as far as where it is. So I'm glad that the film got made. I'm glad it got distributed. I'm glad I got to see it in my overall area too. I didn't have to go to another state or to a film festival just to see it or anything. I got to see it at my local movie theater, which is always great. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. Really enjoyed the film. Highly recommend seeing it. If you're a Chris Stuckman fan, if you kind of agree with a lot of his takes on certain movies, I think you're also going to agree with the way he made his own movies. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. I recommend the movie, and hopefully other Chris Stuckman fans will approve of it as well.